The small car. It's becoming increasingly popular among American drivers. Domestic and foreign manufacturers are marketing little car models with vigorous advertising of their claimed advantages. But what isn't being advertised is another aspect of these little cars, the crash protection they don't give their human occupants. I'm Ben Kelly of the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. In 1965, smaller cars accounted for only 16% of all new car sales in America. But their share of the new car market has doubled since then, and it's been estimated that by the end of the 1970s, small cars will account for half of all new cars sold. It's not unreasonable to expect that as these little cars increase in sales, they'll be involved in an increasingly greater number of crashes with the larger vehicles, such as the family sedan, with which they share the roadway. Will this mean even more lives needlessly lost or damaged on the highway? One study that helps answer that question was done for the U.S. Department of Transportation by the state of New York. It involved analyzing records of 420,000 actual crashes. According to the findings, the lighter and smaller the crashing car, the more likely were the occupants to be seriously injured or killed when it crashed. And conversely, the larger and heavier the car, the better were the occupants' chances of escaping the crash without serious injury. For the heaviest cars, so-called luxury models averaging 4,800 pounds, the New York State study found that death or serious injury occurred in 3.1% of the crash-involved vehicles. But for compact cars, weighing an average of 2,800 pounds, death or serious injury occurred more than twice as often. And in yet smaller compacts, weighing an average of 1,900 pounds, the rate was 9.6%, triple that for the luxury cars, 50% higher than that for the larger compacts, and almost double the 5.5% rate for crash-involved cars of all weights combined. To compare the kinds of protection that occupants of smaller and larger cars can expect in real-world crashes, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety has carried out the exploratory series of crash tests you're about to see. Each test involved a head-on crash between a smaller and a larger car, with each car traveling at a speed between 40 and 50 miles per hour, common everyday driving speeds, considerably lower than those allowed for much highway driving. Results of these tests were made public by Dr. William Haddon, Jr., president of the Institute, at a press conference in Washington, D.C. in late 1971.
I must say that even we were shocked at the extent to which some of these cars collapsed when we had these tests run. Although I'm quick to point out that specialists in the field have known for several years that there was a problem of this type.
In the tests, you'll see a good deal of mangled sheet metal. I urge you to focus not on that, however, but on the far more important damage to and within the passenger compartment, the package that's supposed to protect you, the car's human contents. In these tests, the crash cars were operated from a command car in which the test drivers remotely controlled the speed and direction of the actual test vehicles. The remote control drive unit in the command car and the slave drive unit in a crash car. Crash cars also were equipped with onboard cameras and recording devices. Each crash was filmed from several vantage points, with cameras shooting extremely slow-motion footage. The first cars in our initial series were 1971 model Chevrolets, a small car, the Vega, and a sedan, the Impala, each traveling at 43 miles an hour. This is an onboard view of the approach into that crash, about what it would look like to an occupant of the larger car in real life. The crash of the 1971 Chevrolet Vega gives a vivid example of hostile intrusion by an outside element into the passenger compartment. The design of the small car's hood allowed it to chop backward like a meat cleaver through its windshield and into the passenger space. The second cars in our first series were Fords, the sedan-sized Galaxy and the smaller Pinto. Here's an onboard view of the crash from inside the Pinto. The amount of damage being sustained by the passenger compartment of the smaller car hardly needs comment. Its door flew open as the passenger compartment was squashed. Again, it's not the external, highly visible amount of damage that's most important, but the difference in the two cars' passenger compartments following the crash. The small Pinto. The larger Galaxy with its windshield still intact. And again, the Pinto, whose windshield has fallen out and draped itself like a blanket over the front of the car. In the second series of crashes, the front outboard position in each car was occupied by a test dummy. Here you can see the human-like rib cage of one of them. The head and face of each dummy were painted before each crash so that the dummy would leave a readily visible mark anywhere in the car that his head might impact in the crash, and also would bear a mark at those points on his head that experienced impact. This aided in reconstructing just what happened to the simulated occupant in each car. The head restraint in the Chevrolet Impala could not be positioned to be fully behind the dummy's head. This was true also of the small car's non-adjustable restraint. And now the crash test of the 1972 Chevrolets. Notice the difference in damage done to the two cars' occupant compartments. Invariably, in all these crashes, the lighter, smaller car was propelled backward from the actual point of impact. We don't know for sure whether a real belted human occupant in this little car would also have been beheaded, as this dummy was. But clearly the dummy's experience provides a strong presumption of severe injury. This is the collar mechanism that snapped in the dummy inside the Vega during the beheading, probably as the belted dummy was hurled against this windshield. Here's where the dummy's head was caught between the dashboard and the windshield before it separated from the body. Glass was embedded in the dummy's face. Its arm was sliced open during the crash, and its knees jammed under the dashboard. Batteries from both Chevrolets were smashed to bits, allowing sulfuric acid to splash into the small car's passenger compartment. Those holes in the dummy's shirt were made by the battery acid. One can imagine what might have happened to a human occupant. In contrast to the little car, here is the relatively intact passenger compartment of the larger Chevrolet Impala. The dummy is in comparatively good condition after impacting the padded, energy-absorbing dashboard. Its head restraint, however, was pushed down out of position during the crash. Here in the small car, the Pinto, the head restraint did not reach fully behind the dummy's head. In the larger Ford, the Galaxy, the head restraint did adjust to a point fully behind the head. The crash in real time. Notice the rear window flying out of the Pinto in this slow-motion view. Here, the damage to the small car's passenger compartment is in sharp contrast with that of the larger, less violated Galaxy. The small Pinto's fuel tank was ruptured. Its right front door partially ruptured when the latch broke loose, and the roof buckled inward like a cave-in, allowing the dummy's head to impact the ceiling of the passenger compartment. It also impacted the windshield, as you can see by the large amount of paint left on the glass and glass left on the dummy's face. A broken shoulder harness and lap belt in the Pinto. Its windshield collapsed inward, becoming a hazardous blanket. In contrast, the windshield of the larger Galaxy stayed in place. Note how the Galaxy's passenger compartment remained relatively intact. This head restraint on the Dodge Colt couldn't be adjusted fully behind the dummy's head. That also was true for the larger car, the Fury. In these slow-motion films, watch for a black object flying from and bouncing near the Colt on the left side of the screen. As designed, that safety device, a head restraint, turned into a potentially lethal weapon, a two-pronged flying missile. It should have been made to stay in place. Here are the jagged remains of the Colt's windshield, where the face of the dummy was thrown against it. Note the orange paint from the dummy's face. Here again, broken safety belts. Belt buckles that broke loose in the crash, leaving the small car occupant unprotected. Along with other damage to the dummy and the small car, its leg was broken off. Once again, broken batteries from both cars. Notice the great difference in passenger compartment damage. Even though the dummy in this Plymouth Fury was thrown forward enough to impact the dashboard, he didn't hit it with enough force to leave much deformation. This was so even though his shoulder harness broke. The Fury's head restraint was plunged out of position. The two cars crashed at comparable speeds, but hardly suffered comparable occupant package deformation. On these American Motors cars, note that neither of the head restraints could be adjusted to a position fully behind the dummies' heads. You can see that the Gremlin, by far the largest and the heaviest of the small cars tested, escaped with less actual deformation of its passenger compartment than the other little cars. A view of this same crash from inside the Gremlin. Again, the same view, this time stopping the action on that windshield impact. Now the dummy is starting forward, it is into the windshield, and now it is already on its way back toward the seat. This illustrates the rapidity with which dummies were hurtled forward in all these crashes. The dummy in the small car impacted the headliner, the sun visor and roof beam area, the windshield, and the dashboard. Also, the dummy's knees were wedged up under the small car's dashboard. Once again, a broken safety belt buckle. On this one, the metal of the latch actually ripped in two. Again, broken batteries. In the Ambassador, the dummy also impacted the dashboard, but not with enough force to cause dashboard collapse. The shoulder harness anchorage tore loose from its mount in the larger car, allowing the dummy to be thrown forward. The passenger compartment appears to be in better condition than that of the smaller car. The large car's doors survived the crash in good shape, unlike the little car, which showed door buckling. In our modern-day highway environment that mixes large, intermediate, and small vehicles at speeds comparable to and often considerably higher than those in the 40 to 50 mile per hour tests you've just seen, occupants of small cars involved in crashes are being routinely exposed to far greater hazard than occupants of larger-sized cars. But they've not been alerted to this risk prior to car purchase. They have not been given vital information about the distinct safety drawbacks of these vehicles. Just as the public is being warned about other environmental hazards, so does it need to be warned of the hazards inherent in these small cars that are being so favorably and so heavily advertised. The American consumer must have this information as an essential basis for choosing for or against the small car.